To kick off our financial security flash talks, please welcome to the stage Stephanie Mehta, Editor-in-Chief of Fast Company.
Hi, good morning, everyone. What an inspiring session that was. In fact, all the sessions this morning have been so inspiring, and they've really set us up nicely for this next segment of talks. These are flash talks. They are designed to be both deep and fast, thus the name, Flash Talks. And they're really meant to help all of us understand a very specific element of the issues that sit at the intersection of financial security and human capital. How can we enhance access to capital for citizens? How can we help entrepreneurs and workers embrace technology and technological tools that will help them benefit and become more competitive? Let's listen and learn.
For our first talk, welcome Maryana Costa Checa, co-founder and CEO of Laboratoria.
So back in 2013, I decided to move back to my country, to Lima, Peru, after around a decade of living abroad. And two friends and I decided to start a software development company. I was completely new to the sector. And to my surprise, more than finding clients that would trust us, the hardest challenge was actually to build a team. We discovered there was soaring demand for developers in Lima, and there just weren't enough around. But with a lot of effort and patience, our team started taking shape. And it looked like this. As you can tell, early on, I realized that if we did not start recruiting in a different way, I was going to be the only woman in our company. So I decided that if women developers weren't coming to us, I was going to go out and look for them. I started immersing myself in the world of software development communities out there to see if I could find more of them. And usually, this was the scene that I would find. And I'm not a developer, so the average number of women developers in these spaces was 0. And it was such an interesting experience, a group of great guys that shared, aside from being all men, shared that they all had amazing career opportunities ahead. And I was so struck by that. And the more that I started to get to know this community, I discovered that actually many of them did not come from a traditional 5-year good university background. And I found what I like to call a loophole in the system. The software development space as one of the first spaces to realize that in a rapidly changing world, skills and the ability to learn for oneself have actually become more important than diplomas. And with this community, I started thinking tech, ironically, is actually one of the spaces with the greatest potential for inclusion. Millions of jobs to offer for millions of people that don't necessarily have to come from that more privileged background where they've had access to 5-year good colleges around my country and region. And this is when I went back to my co-founders and said, you know what, we should ditch the software development company. There's a lot of people doing that already. And we should actually start Laboratoria, a training program that can make sure that this growing tech sector becomes a source of opportunity for more women. Actually, make sure that techs become the opportunity that women have been looking for. So we set out to start a bootcamp that would serve specifically women that, due to economic limitation, haven't been able to access quality higher education or jobs. And from the beginning, we said, we're going to build a bootcamp that's actually way more than a bootcamp. We're going to go out and find talent where usually nobody else does. We're going to build a learning experience that in 6 months, in this crazy, intense, immersive six months, not only make sure to train the best JavaScript developers out there, but make sure we can actually prepare the best women leaders to go out and conquer this space. A learning experience where the soft skills, which are actually the hardest ones to get, are immersed throughout the opportunity. And where students develop a passion and a discipline for learning that ensures that the world out there will actually become their oyster. And then we're going to go out and show companies, big and small, that this is the pool of talent they've been waiting for, that this is the place that they should come and recruit, not only to build better teams, more diverse teams, but actually to build better software products. It's been 5 amazing years since we've started. We've grown throughout Latin America. We went from Lima to Santiago, Ciudad de Mexico, Guadalajara, Sao Paulo. We're about to open in Colombia next year. We've had over 1,300 graduates now. Over 80% of them go out and work in now hundreds of companies around the region. At the beginning, it was only the startups and the agencies. Now we have the banks, the insurance companies, the governments. Our graduates, on average, triple their income, which represents not only a better future for them, but for their families and their communities. And beyond that, they're actually starting to change the face of an entire sector. Along the way, we realized there was an opportunity not only to get more women in tech, but to also train the companies that they are joining and play a role in building the type of mindset, our culture that big companies need to actually become better workplaces for talent like our students. I think that today we've talked a lot about what inclusive growth means. And I had this realization while I was sitting here, that through our work with both women and with companies, we're working to accomplish this vision, a vision that says that we want to build a more diverse, a more inclusive, and a more competitive digital economy in Latin America that represents opportunity for all people. And it seems like it, but I did not refine this vision before coming to the conference. When I was sitting there, I was like, it's so similar, but no, we've been working in this for a long time now, because this is very unfortunate, but I come from the most unequal region in the world. And I think that our governments are not doing enough, and then it's on us to work every single day to change this. What I feel most proud of is that I think we're truly changing the face of tech in Latin America. Yeah. Thank you. Even my 3-year-old daughter is there. It's amazing to see in every city where we are how things have started to change. And it's a movement because our graduates have become a source of inspiration for thousands and thousands of women that today apply to our program. Women that now think that there's a place for them in the tech sector, that they can change their lives in their future. And the thing that I like the most is that we're not just bringing women to any sector. We're bringing women to the sector that will define our future. So by bringing more women to become technology designers and creators, we're actually getting more women to design and play a role in building that future. And I am confident that a future that's co-designed by women will be a better future for all. Thank you.
Next up, welcome Neville Crawley, CEO of Kiva.
Okay. Oops. Huh. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start with a question. Who here has a bank card like this? It can be a Mastercard or other card, but a bank card like this. Who has an ID that looks a bit like this? Some kind of photo ID. Right? We all do. And most days, most of us barely even notice we have them. Since I joined Kiva over the last couple of years, I've realized these are the two most important things I own. They make me inside the system, right? They make all of us inside the system. They allowed me to go to college. They allowed me to move to the US. They allowed me to get health insurance for my family. They allowed me to do all of the things that we do inside the system. They allowed me agency and choice. Very practically, they allowed me to be here today. Now, imagine what life would be like if you didn't have these things. If you had no ID, you had no bank account. You'd be unable to function in society. You'd be invisible. That's what it's like for over 1 billion people in the world today. No ID, no bank account, invisible and excluded. Every day, those billion people, they slip further and further behind us because they don't have these things. And by slipping behind, they're stuck in a nightmare of poverty, inequality, early childhood death, and 1,000 other terrors and indignities that come with being outside of the system, with being outside of our system. In 2019, this must be morally unacceptable. But we have the power to change it. We have the power to give every person in every country a digital identity and a bank account, to give them power, to give them agency and choice, to make them visible the same way that we are. At Kiva, we've been proving that this can happen. We've been proving that we can bring every citizen of a country into the system in less than 2 years. This may sound like a bold dream, a bold claim, but at Kiva, we've made it a reality. Since our founding in 2005, we've moved billions of dollars to millions of people in over 90 countries around the world. And now we've taken that and we've developed a revolutionary blockchain technology that for the first time in history allows entire countries to bring every one of their citizens, their entire population, into the system in one go, quickly, cheaply, securely, and easily. Take Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone's the 15th poorest country in the world, has the lowest life expectancy. 80% of the population is unbanked. And yet, 1 month ago, President Bio of Sierra Leone became the first world leader, the first, we believe, of many world leaders, to celebrate the launch of the Kiva system for his country. By the end of this year, every single adult in Sierra Leone, 5.3 million people, will have a safe, secure, self-sovereign digital identity which interoperates with the entire financial system. And we created this in less than 1 year and at less than $1 a person. I'd like to introduce you to Nancy. Nancy's a teacher, a mother, a small business owner, and an Ebola survivor. She had previously been rejected for a bank account to grow her business 6 times because she didn't have identity. 1 month ago, using Kiva, she opened her first bank account and gained access to finance in less than 2 minutes with just her fingerprint. She can now start building life she's dreamed of for herself and for her family. This is a game changer for the world's poor. To become visible, to save, to borrow, to achieve, and to contribute their maximum to their family and their community, the way that we can. As we say at Kiva, talent is universal, opportunity is not. But all around the world, I've seen that hope and dignity is restored, and the human potential is unlocked when our sisters and our brothers gain fair access, especially fair access to capital. A financially inclusive future is available today to every person in every country in the world. The technology innovation to do it, it's already here, right now. It's just not evenly distributed yet. I'm here today to invite you to join us to prioritize giving the 1 billion people outside the system, like Nancy and her family, the lives they deserve. Oops. The lives they deserve. At Kiva, we're building open source, interoperable, very lightweight tech that's live and changing lives right now. I hope you'll be in touch to learn more about this technology and how we can work together to bring agency and choice to everyone in the world, every single last person on the planet. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage David Rolf, founder and president emeritus of SEIU 775.
Good morning. You know, I sometimes feel like I get asked to do some of these presentations and speeches to deliver the bad news that others on a program may not want to say. So when it comes to financial security for middle and working class Americans, unfortunately, too many of the facts speak for themselves, and we are at risk of becoming a low-wage nation. 50 years ago, America had the largest middle class by per capita in the world. Today, we're number 27. A typical American today brings in about $36,000 a year, or about $18 an hour. And shockingly, the low point of economic inequality in US history was 1970, the low point of black poverty, 1975, and the net impact of women doubling their workforce participation since 1977 has been approximately $0 in take-home pay for the bottom 90% of income-earning households. In fact, our generation has witnessed the greatest upwards transfer of wealth in history, as the richest 1% have gained $21 trillion in net assets over the last 30 years, while the poorest 50% have lost $900 billion. And on average, since 1975, on an annual basis, $2.5 trillion, or 12% of our gross domestic product, has leaked upwards from the middle of the economy to the very top. In individual terms, that means that if the income of a person, of an income earner, had grown as fast as the economy, inflation, and productivity, she would not be making $36,000 a year, she'd be making $58,000 a year, and a typical family wouldn't be making $60,000 a year, they'd be making $110,000 a year. So it's hardly surprising when we read that 40% of us can't afford an emergency $400 expense, or, according to one recent survey, that only 1/3 of Americans were able to pay all their bills and save more than $100 in the most recent month. All of this has taken place in the world's richest country, with a growing economy, with rising education levels, rising productivity, growing capital markets, and growing corporate profits. So if 40 years of wage stagnation can't be blamed on poor education, poor productivity, a shrinking economy, or struggling markets, what went wrong? Was God punishing us for our sins? For better or for worse, probably not. What happened was the result of human policy choices. Stagnant overtime and minimum wage pay at the federal level, a policy choice. The transfer of risk and cost for health care from employers to employees, a policy choice. Eliminating pensions in favor of 401ks, a policy choice. Legalizing open market share buybacks, a policy choice. Failure to invest in infrastructure, a policy choice. Transferring risk for higher education onto students, a policy choice. And turning our tax system into an upwards wealth distribution system was also a policy choice. And I could go on. America has made choice after choice that all told have added up to death by 1,000 cuts for the American middle class. And while some may have produced short-term growth and short-term profitability, in the long run, this level of inequality benefits no one. After all, low-wage workers make really bad customers and really bad taxpayers. And to paraphrase noted labor radical Alan Greenspan, if a supermajority of the participants in a market economy no longer believe it works in their interest, the system ultimately becomes unsustainable. And today, more millennials approve of socialism than of capitalism. So what should we do? The good news is that if human policy choices got us into this mess, human policy choices can get us out, but policymaking doesn't occur in a vacuum. Policy choices are the result of the exercise of power, and right now, middle and working class Americans have almost none of that. Power, of course, can come from organized wealth. It can come from organized force. But in a democracy, the most important form of power comes from ordinary citizens organizing together to create the change they want to see in the world. It's the strength of organized people. So why is it in our democracy that there is no organization or social movement advocating for the simple idea that a life of hard work should result in financial security and stability as part of an inclusive middle class? We have an NRA for gun owners, we have an AARP for retired Americans, a Sierra Club for environmentalists, an ACLU for civil libertarians, an AIPAC for supporters of Israel, and a trade association or society for every profession known to humanity. But yet, in the US, there is not a single large-scaled, open-source national membership organization that anyone's allowed to join dedicated to the idea that a thriving middle class is good for markets, good for democracy, and good for the country. If it could be built, it would be the largest membership association in the country and the most trusted distribution channel for financial health products and services. As a country and an economy, we have a choice. We can continue on the path we're on, governing against the interests of the supermajority who work hard for a living and just hope that a new fintech app or a new tax credit will somehow take care of the problem. But this is a risky path. History knows no examples of this level of inequality that did not result in a revolution or an autocracy. Or we can embrace the idea that power is the currency of change and build a generation-long bipartisan consensus that we all do better when we all do better, that inclusion is rocket fuel for markets and for democracy, and that a thriving middle class is indeed good for America. I hope we will do the latter. Thank you very much.
For our final Flash Talk, welcome Maryana Iskander, CEO of Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator.
If you can just get more skills, you'll have a leg up on opportunity. This familiar promise is not holding true for a ballooning generation of young Africans. The world over, there's a growing consensus that today's education is not delivering for tomorrow's jobs. And maybe, just maybe, all of our focus and funding on getting more and more skills for young people is misplaced. Let's talk about nail polish, weightlifting, and why you can't get a dental check on a cruise ship. These were the things that actually mattered for young people in our network at Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator to land their first job and financial security. I live in Johannesburg, a city with a shortage of 2,000 butchers. It's a well-paying job that allows a young person to enter a career in the trades and even earn some money on the side in their communities. The skills program for becoming a butcher is 9 months of classroom training and a math test about the place value of decimals. As Harambee, we decided to shadow experienced butchers and try to learn what it really takes to do that job. Guess what we learned? You have to be able to stand in a really cold room for many hours. You have to work without talking, and you have to get rid of your nail polish. We designed a matching system that could test for those things in about a day, and felt like that was a better answer than waiting for 9 months to discover that a young person might struggle with the cold, struggle with not talking at work, or struggle without their gelish. Now, you might ask what weightlifting has to do with being a shift supervisor in an underground mine. These technical jobs often require applicants to lift weights as part of a strength test. We got involved as Harambee when we discovered that young women were passing every other part of the hiring process except this one thing. Our answer to more skills was a strength and conditioning boot camp that taught them how to lift weights and pass that part of the test. Within 6 weeks, we had 10x'd the pass rate for young women into these jobs and taken an opportunity to educate an industry about how to maybe measure differently for the things that they were looking for. I'm sure none of you have had a dental check on a cruise ship. That's because cruise ships work really hard to avoid any medical procedures on board. And that goes for their hiring processes as well. A few years ago, we were approached by our partners in government to ask how we could make a plan for young people that lived in isolated townships that are, frankly, too far away to afford any form of transport to get to a job. We decided not to accept geography as a limitation, and we pathwayed them onto cruise ships where the commute is the job. Now, what was the hardest part about this? It wasn't teaching them how to swim or helping them apply for a passport. It was fighting with the ship's medical doctor to not exclude them because they didn't pass the dental check, the result of poor nutrition and something that was easily fixable. So how do we scale up this smart matching to make a meaningful dent in tackling youth unemployment? We've started by mapping it across 150,000 jobs with the intent of making these micro barriers visible and solvable. We have an employability map that has grown 8 years and 250 million data points later across 500 employers and self-employers and a growing network of 700,000 young people, all trying to find common ways to find each other. Now that we've mapped it, we're platforming it, creating a national architecture working with government and the private sector in a way that's laser-focused on breaking barriers, on building pathways that let more people in than keep them out, and on a way of working that keeps us falling in love with the problem and not staying in love with our solutions. So we need your help. Inclusion is not just about income and opportunity. It's also about identity and language. Every day at Harambee, we interact with thousands of young people, online, on the phone, and in person. And we measure their ability, their energy, and their potential. Yet what do the Sustainable Development Goals, policy papers, and media headlines call this group of young people? NEETs. It's a non-word that stands for not in employment, education, or training. We define them by what they can't access and what they can't do. I think we can do better than that. So my ask today is that we think about a better word, a word that can describe these young people for who they are and what they can do. I've got some ideas, but I hope you'll find me later today to share some of yours, because we need to find a way to represent these young people for what they can contribute, not just to the future of the African continent, but to the entire world. Thank you.
To wrap things up, welcome back Stephanie Mehta, Editor-in-Chief of Fast Company.
A boot camp in Latin America for women in tech that also is building women leaders and, in turn, changing the companies that they work for and turning them into better workplaces. A tech and finance platform that is working to bring digital identity to 1 billion global citizens, enabling them to access banking and financing, and by extension, agency and choice. An exhortation for all of us to engage in policy choices that benefit all, perhaps creating for the first time a membership organization that advocates for the middle class, and an organization that has expanded employment opportunities for young Africans by reducing barriers to entry, such as weightlifting tests and dental exams. The thing that weaves together these flash talks, and I was backstage listening to them in awe, is that these are all common sense solutions. We heard nothing radical, except maybe that Alan Greenspan quote. And it just made me think about what all of us in this room could do if we applied our brain power to coming up with solutions to democratize finance and create new opportunities for the digital citizens of the world. Thanks so much for listening, and on to the next session.